Usually like early in the day. Good son, I didn't want to smell him back, you know. Oh, okay.
Okay, folks, as you're coming in, go ahead and grab a seat. You're gonna be moving around a lot, so don't feel like you have to be married to a particular table. I'm gonna have, take a minute here to get sorted, and then we'll actually be moving quite a bit. Okay, well, welcome everybody. We are in meeting 5 of the Deliberation and Stewardship team. We're coming to the close of the first phase of this work, and tonight, buddy, got this. I'll just stand up here. Go. All right, I'm gonna ask somebody from my crew to help me out. There we go. So we got a lot to do tonight. But I think it has potential to be just really, I think, valuable meeting in terms of kind of bringing us back together and thinking about what we've accomplished in this first phase and what still needs to happen. The important things we want to get out of tonight is we're trying to come together and really review and refine some of the shared understanding and shared direction from phase 1 and see what refinements we can make to kind of clarify and create greater levels of alignment between the group. And then from that, what areas do we need to do some additional work should we decide to move forward in phase 2? We're going to do that by really going through a lot of the content you see around you. This builds on a lot of the commentary and discussion and summary work that's come out of the different meetings. And in each of the different groups you guys will be moving in the first part, trying to really pull out kind of key essence elements of shared learning and shared direction, and then help us sort of think about the areas where additional work is needed. And then we'll be moving into a discussion where we get a chance to really hear from each other around our positions and perspectives and what we've learned. And then a final stage at the end of the meeting where we'll sort of talk about where we are and as individuals in terms of how we see ourselves moving forward, whether we see ourselves moving forward into phase 2, and then make a final decision as a group that way. Before we get going any further, I want to invite Gail Gary to come up and just offer a couple welcoming comments as we conclude this phase.
All right, thank you, Clark. Again, for those of you who I have yet to meet, my name is Gail Gary. I am president of the Steamboat Springs City Council. Also here tonight is Councilor West, and I believe Councilor Dixon may be joining us as well. But again, I just really wanted to take a few minutes at the start of tonight's meeting to say thank you. Thanks to all of you, and to thank you personally, as well as on behalf of City Council, for stepping up to serve on the Deliberation and Stewardship team. I know that it has taken a lot more time than probably any of you may have anticipated, both in terms of the meetings as well as the time in between the meetings, in terms of preparing for the meetings, learning about the issues, as well as, no doubt, talking to a lot of different people, whether they're your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, or somebody who just knows you're on the Deliberation and Stewardship team and wants to talk to you. So again, we really appreciate that time that you have spent. And no doubt, it may have meant that you've gotten a lot of public attention, maybe a little more than you anticipated, or more that you are comfortable, have been comfortable with. So we do really appreciate you taking the time to serve this community. We appreciate you coming to the table with your perspectives, as well as your willingness to deliberate and to work collaboratively to come forward with a recommendation that serves the best interests of this community. So you should take a minute, pat yourself on the back, or the person sitting next to you on the back, just to say thank you for all of the hard work that you have done to get to this moment here tonight. So again, on behalf of City Council, we just want to say thank you. We have certainly been watching what you've been doing, as well as reading to keep up in terms of the conversations that have been happening. We know that there has been a lot of information that has been shared, a lot of information that has been learned. And so again, we look very much forward to our meeting on September 9th to hear the readout and the recommendation from you all in terms of where we go from here. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Clark to walk you all through the meeting and get to the hard work that needs to be done tonight. So thank you.
Okay, so just in terms of quickly thinking through the flow tonight, we're gonna start out in some smaller groups, give you guys a chance in those groups to talk to each other. You're gonna be spending time again thinking through sort of where are we aligned in terms of understanding and direction, and where is there some work to do. Then we'll come into two different larger group sessions, and we'll be working together and really have a chance to listen and learn. Tonight is a lot about listening to each other. It's gonna be really important to come in tonight, as I hope you have, into all of the meetings with an open mind and an open heart, and really trying to remember why you committed to this and what we talked about at the very beginning in terms of trying to learn, trying to listen, really opening yourself up to other people's perspectives so that you can get to a place where we can see if we can find common ground that we can move forward on. That was really what the core idea of all of this phase is about. Just to remind you guys of the work you've done so far, you know, the first stage of this work has been all about trying to understand a very knotty and complex set of issues. I know for some of you, you feel like, man, we're just scratching the surface, and we also heard comments from others for like it was too much to take in. So hopefully, you know, somewhere in the middle, we're getting to a place where we've actually learned quite a lot. But of course, to be able to, you know, get into more detailed and tactical conversations about what might work at the Brown Ranch property, you're gonna have to dig even deeper, and that would be what phase 2 would be about. This stage was really about understanding what are the needs, what are the opportunities, what are the constraints, and doing that in a way where we're coming to a place where we have the same understanding of those things, rather than talking about those issues from very different perspectives, or really not being aligned at all on an understanding of those most fundamental parts. Because if we couldn't have that fundamental understanding, it's very difficult to move into more tactical or strategic questions. Everybody be careful, these boards are coming after people. And you know, if they're going after him, like they're not sparing anybody. So just jump into what we're up to next. Is there anything else we need to say here? So first part of tonight is really about, again, clarifying where we've landed in terms of shared understanding and direction. One way we tried to support ourselves in the group in this was to take a lot of the summary statements, which have come out of the meetings you've done together, both the actual deliberation stewardship team meetings, as well as the various inquiry team meetings we've done, and pull those into a survey and get your perspective on how well those summary statements land in terms of the things that we've learned. And so I think many of you guys, we got 37 responses, so pretty good response rate. Took the time to go through and sort of evaluate those statements and give us feedback on them. So we're going to dig into those places so we can really understand the areas of agreement and alignment, and the places where we have more work to do in terms of getting aligned. And some of those places we might not find alignment, but we want to understand why. So you can see here, there was a lot of areas of agreement, and not just sort of, it wasn't always the same people agreeing or the same people disagreeing. So it was really interesting when you broke it down, was different people were disagreeing in different places, different people were agreeing in different places. And overall, most people had at least one or two ideas that they disagreed with. So this wasn't the type of thing where people went in and just sort of like, I agree with all this. It was actually pretty diversified in terms of how people were looking at things. And no single person disagreed with more than 30% of the statements. So that tells us that there's a lot that we have to build on, but there's also a lot of work we can do to get even further along in terms of seeing where we can align on these things. So what we're gonna do next.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Was there any one statement that had a majority, like either way, or I guess not in favor, but like where the majority of people said, I disagree on a single statement?
Did we have, I don't think we, go ahead.
You have one statement that has majority disagree, which is there is insufficient information to determine whether we need to consider all three scenarios to meet our housing plan. That was the only statement that had a majority disagree.
Thank you.
So here's what we're gonna do. You guys are going to self-select yourselves into different groups. And we're gonna rotate every 20 minutes. So you're gonna have to work pretty quick. You're gonna go to any one of these tables, all right? Bill's table, right here. Gonna be talking about the work we did around shared community values, defining the problem, defining the opportunity, and understanding developability. Over in JJ's table, in back, we're gonna be talking about what we learned in terms of housing needs, demand, and affordability, and where we found some direction on those areas. Back in the back, Kale will be talking about how we can actually meet those housing needs, sort of locationally where, and then also, you know, getting into some of the tools that we can use for that. And then over here with me, we'll be talking about keys to moving forward, both in terms of the principles that we've discussed and where there's some alignment around those principles, but also thinking about the types of strategies we would need to dig deeper into. And also what it would take to make phase 2 successful based on the things we've learned from this work so far. So you guys can also at this phase really help us think about how would we want to design a second phase of this work. So with that, anything else we want to say? I'm going to invite you then to stand up or sit down if you're right where you want to be, but think about where you want to go. Realize that you only will be able to visit 3. So of these 4, you get 3. And let's go ahead and sort yourself into groups, and we're gonna get started. We'll have 20 minutes.
Yep. Here I am. I get up. Yeah. Knowing that there's no much to the digest, training you wants to come on. Take a look at that's the bar next to you. You don't let it all your function looks obvious. Just like a bit of freeze now. We're just talking about. We'll get started out. So things are like being really strong out there. I know you probably said we see back in the office. I'll share it. Not this. I guess it's my thought. We said that. And all the things you guys people said in the survey. So these are so that's the official video said. Areas where there's like really
Here's the light blue, is, you know, that is very. Purple. That is one. Fairly. And red is slightly. And. So essentially, that's not over. So it's fairly important. More important than. But some people. So essentially, blue, purple, green, strong levels of you know, all over the. Yeah. So is there some. Something that everybody needs to be. You need to ever use. Yes. And you guys all. That is anything that's successful as product to. Yes. So, yeah. Yeah. Sustainability. Things that we have as much as letting out. Very important. Our open space. And it's like smaller space, these smaller. Obviously, all just lots of options, but when you can be basically right now, you know, that's really you couldn't be anything you want. So I mean, that's actually. You know, there's things that there's not being left out. But it could be so with. With no parameters. There's parameters, there's no somebody sustain all of farming. Believe the same that she has to say. Stay more fresh than that's what I'm saying, it's providing for our communications and like, you know, that was exactly like, that feels like it's starting to, obviously, all these things are worked out into actually good house, but is there anything out there that you like, that the other side, your kids, the necessities, that you can miss it, and fundamentally think is, you got. Well, there's not much. Well, not really, right? I think what we asked was to get we together, both different things. You know, I understand. You're saying that questions were set up the, eventually going back to school. So there's some all the meetings. All right, the service side. So maybe that's what it's key for either thing. Summarize it and let you guys hear it. Version is great. That's not what it's really important. I give them the option. I expect to say that. There's gotta be some. So let's talk through this. Come back to these ones. Survey video goes, those feel like these are really part of. So that's the problem. That's the one you're gonna find first. So this conversation on perspective shooters. You know, those. He's gonna say, it's like it's a very association. Things in the rational state, this one, but you're looking at the bottom. Let's take one. Yeah. But I think that's the reality. I think it's a lot of that. But I also think that that feel like like still people like where they're in with each other. It's building that you know you want to see so yeah, with usually the other side something that's probably not bad is not but you know maybe there is instead of or you might but it's not like the cost that in my saying this the problem is it like you say what you need it's affordable I can think cost open space doesn't have to be doesn't have to be you know millions of dollars going into part of that. But for me, as the industry, there was a hill. After all, right, there's sleds, it's these sleds, it was. But just easy. This guy's just gonna go on here. Except for some people, that billions of dollars, finance rights. Nobody's outside. You know, nobody's using it. Does that? So there's a difference. I guess the way the building department does it, the bills folded until it's maybe stronger relatively. That was very still. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, there's a legal like forward. It's always no matter what.
We know that the tonight you probably
Just to, their friends. And, because it's a big difference. It is in there. His motion values.
Secondary.
The God is responsible for what I think is fundamental. Was in those. But you know, the expenses. They have we most of this stuff like that. Is that it's the working.
Yeah. Well, his resume is this thing. But he is a consultant for the city. But he said he knows the city's instructions. About it. Until after. Well, that's not, that's common knowledge, that's learning about, that's not conspiracy theory, that's. And it's like unusual or something. He could have put this stuff. They're failing to say and then you talk about mostly from this one, you know, where that like the natives and the mistrust.
The jobs are there. Because we know, of course, that they offer, but it does not be that. Then we have to hire some farmers.
Like, this is what it takes. It's comes to one of the other aspects of this is, I think,
Because the online specifics,
I don't know.
and you know, you're.
You have to have some destiny. That's what you want to have. That's what you want to have.
Like, you guys, wait, I feel like these people are having philosophical.
That's right, you're right.
So.
That's just report, the trust question is different.
Right.
We focus on, so here's the availability. When I hear costs, here for, intersects are about 100%. My numbers in all housing was but that's what I just read. City. Yeah, it's we determined that I think can't go. And there's a black line. Yes. That would be, yeah, they made out to, they got jobs.
And I think that was pretty very nice. The question is, Western County Rural is probably the way that he's local businesses that go out somewhere. More Western County Rural business that is looking at developing property. Like road is not. something that we train on, like, good.
Well, there was. I mean, the review of these statements that you're rich policy. It's about. Space. I have.
Organizations and the clear about the control, how you about so much. Like, it's a good thing, right? Because that's one of the facts that actually creates space to develop. Or that doesn't exhaust the operating expenses. That impossible. So here's the fundraising, it's soccer, so it doesn't have us. Feeling now, that be there. So it's on the way. So there's a way to kind of influence that. I think, look, I think most people.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, most people are coming out of that.
Yes, that is one of the things, but most of the fish, you know, that five or four things that they. Right now, there is to be coming in. I think that when we continue to speak for station for, yes, like, in now, people say like, right, it's inbound didn't feel like has been like fault did later on because of jobs, but right. So this is what like people are now, and they decided to act. So it would be like it's an opportunity, and I probably should feel right. So like, yeah, that's more of an ask you. Like I said, everybody are strong in the character, and they both that it's something that different than and believe that looking at ground and something. They're building along with others, you know, that ability or but I think that they are
There's there, some mountain, apartment building.
I agree. That's one to.
That's how it should be. That's how it is.
It's more than that. Well, I think what you're trying to this one is. If somebody came to something like somebody.
realize that in this frustration does happen. And sure, it's great. But is about it. She did, I think, see all my house. Just when you have for us. You know,
There is one something to the city, and I
I would be looking at it. Yes.
Next one.
Yeah.
Holland says we should have that, about soils. I'm an expert about hydro.
That one's been talked about as important. As to the situation I saw. He said, I read. 10 years. Okay, so. That's not the first skill. One more thing. What's Steamboat that's already, they don't have safe crossings, they don't have sidewalks, they're not interconnected. Sleepy Bear is on next across. Still like, so people have to walk down. It's the bus station. Something else out there. Things that are out there. That's my.
So start that.
Haven't seen what it was out top 40.
All right, it's time to switch. So grab the next table. Thanks, team. I'm not even sure which. Oh. Okay, good. Yes. Thanks. Hey, Bill. I'll be back. That's right. Good, great minds think all right, so. So it's an aspiration. Gas lines and all the steps should be taken to build that section of facility at the side. You guys will have for the enforcement these weeks. And then what we say. Small town, that's those breaking down some reason. Like we see additional housing laws, there's some making it. Survey.
And, I'm sorry, so that was the one. And I talked about.
Why do you have such a, like, goes back to, just acknowledge.
This is something that was not happening. The other is the moving away from the civil project.
Lowest. So there was the one, the in-ground range to that. All of the things housing, or you know, address the they're going to be sure, consideration to collections, this is how we define it. Every average, you have economic. Shared this this was one of the most like. Those are the kind of things. What was for you? Because the interfering feedback of those I found it not inflation. Is that, you know, figure out what we're trying to say is the shot of like everything, but here's all this is done is that you have to so there's so we're on the language, we get that.
The same place honestly,
The soils would be something, you can build with it.
and but this to me was the biggest question than the ones yeah, but I'm done now. So that's working that. Like,
It's also and development around that, options. And the answer to make sure that we can do the right that is itself. And the engineering. Well,
This is there's no good for most areas of the what is good. What's your possibility? What is the short exercise? Okay, scale.
Not fair. You know, it's like back all now. You know.
Why you say.
Absolutely.
Different.
If you want to decide to introduce.
Voted on the bill. They. They forgot all the ways to study. President Payne, they.
And that's what he said, right?
Very useful things. I got one right. Foundation. There's slides.
I would say it's also not so bad. There are a lot of people have a big, but you know what, and just for me, it's because it's sad, it's really surplus, and you know, what it's, it's $1. That's when you say that it's offset by the balance, it's free. Real sure. I'm getting offset on, I'm doing She wants to see under it, and she still thinks courses. But speaking of like heritage, silver hammer, a little iron, the Steamboat, there's some foods that has some fields. But everybody take care of not yet. I see that, and I think this is the pressure. I didn't, I maybe wasn't. But, you know, as I've seen this echo. And from my perspective, yeah, maybe something's like, obviously, it's right. Oh.
It's not, yeah, I have.
Maybe what else we are good, but at least they can be working together.
You can't, find the city and buy it, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Let's say something like anything. I mean, but again, you want to figure out, just because you know, the authority to finally. Verification, there's alignment. And then. Well, hearing, that's not happening.
Basically, you can cut it with this model. So. It's basically, but shitty. It's not gonna help it. Transparent.
Yeah, so you like, will we be able to get your name on this? For the end of the day? Yeah, we'll get, thank you. Straight on.
The reason says that this sort of smaller scale. That is.
Space for. The number of most of very busy, but very busy. Which is the way it's saying. They said, so, 2,500 pages. And I think it's very big, so.
You're seeing it, it's lines and other sides. Financial sustainability. There's a principle around trust. That's your. So it's not, it's like, look, I'm gonna see something out there. There's other essential needs. After the bars, you can kind of just so a lot of people can't.
There's big. Yeah. Well, we have a governmental agreement out. We're just. We get a big back. Probably has got some. Well, you know, that's what.
So it makes a lot of sense, it's part of the coordination, they're on, these are all the percentage one, right? And therefore, you're using by I just don't hear. You're guys, that's the reason to see, like, you said something again, right? So that was the intention, so there's certainly going to do that. They are prioritized and certain things that start to fall off. You know, even though people said they wanted them in the here's that's another way to proceed. But this is right, it has a lot of clear. And that's being great, and this is twice for you, but yeah,
It's really not to walk, so it's like. Is afforded driving. Those sounds. So that's, you know, like, we're gonna take and these relationships are just overarching issue and some of the and start by saying. What we take, so just not based on the intention. It's not, and they're doing fine about some people, it's very, very, let's see, our change, that's market, money, or the taxes. Which is going to be so 2 by 4. So what do you like? But you guys, we go fundamental. Those seem like it's housing. I did those in the basement stuff with that, providing the breaths. And houses wasn't coming to it. Then we can see like really down the street and scale it. And so it's, you know, that's a good thing. Very long, but it should be. They're really truly, you know, like, yeah, the only one was for he should be ready. Because incorporate out the space, that's a positive. That's some of this. That whole thing supporting,
That is. Being that conversation. Is there, so not the.
Cover those 3.
And I think that, although the idea of.
They're fighting for us. You're saying I don't.
So nobody on this is. Actually, what's actually. Voting for this primary plan, understand, it was voting for the concept of. I think it's. We want to pass that, and then phase 2 becomes like, okay, what can we? Yeah, like, massive, I'm saying. Anybody who really hates it, or you should have a few. You already that behavior, not like any guidance, it's gonna be trash. More shit is.
But I might do it anyway, because having open space and so, and. Usually, you know, getting exist for the. You should do that. That's what I mean. Make those, and think you like your shit. That, you know, it's going to take some great rate. All right, we're going to space there. All right, that's good.
Because it's not us, I'm here. You're not neighborhoods and all the apply. Yeah.
And just to give them the implication of ways, because I think for what else similar to this gets as far as previously. You know, it's really just ways to the detail. What they did, that was. And so there's also. Not. Yeah, well, that's. Kind of cool, right? I don't think. They got. Yeah, I just. I say.
I don't know anyone else who's comes to that.
No, in a way that's really big. Trying to see. So, in the implementation of the state, the police. Those are not really appreciation for different perspectives they share. Unpack that. Really is. There's still a lot of class. So there's a lot of surprises and aspirations. Turn around. Turn small. And then if shared value, and then value is being as then if so people feel like this before we did exactly different ideas, but working on people not as they felt a lot of that conversation between Tracy and Willis and okay. The party always placed
That sounds like the loss.
it's in a general.
What's actually.
For those.
What's actually. Insurance.
Phase two, it seems like the last fire. Let's visit that one. And then the last. So we're speaking actually with us around. If I speak the part, and then it's. Really.
So this is like we're in values, there's less against the quality of life. It's also addressed the growing economic disparity. I'm sure back to colors, one suggestion was not doing the right things, self with economic disparity. I think it was and then the other suggestion was don't make it sound like ground range. So part of the nation. So these are the two suggestions that recently was so those are fast applications. Is there a question? Well, I could, maybe the first question is, any proposals that I have presented the support for those state character, those states, is it a good idea? Like, housing, or land there, housing, but if you need.
Not the by But. As you go right, one after file, and then we say, oh, well, I have plenty of time, all right, now we're going to get go. But that's shocking. Yeah. Especially, you know, so many things. So I need translate. Even though that's right, that's why. We have, we have this today.
Read about, well, but it's like, you know, about it is like, typically like sometimes less what we want.
So if you don't have to, you're just happy. But and like, well, you don't have to make like that. Like, we all your folks. It's how careful you don't have to. Yeah, so the side, somewhere outside, you're going to pass on each good one.
Another concept just to build on that. Is this kind of second to such that.
So, like, they.
Study does that. Twice the size of yeah. So we decided that the always right, yeah, tax target. Yeah. It's extremely expensive.
How do you avoid that? Like we're.
Scale in a way. That's always sort of.
Say that.
That's a different, you shouldn't put it. Pretty small.
Sorry.
I pointed that out. I would keep the strong. Jim, why did the worst? That's not act now. That was. But why? Shy, able to see that because they don't have the swings requiring specific things. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying. There are people amongst us. Let most of she go to that. Get understanding. Ground. All of those. There's something that's flooded out of cities. Why do they? Areas. That's so. And then some low, we got those knowledge that there's, or just it's unpublished. That's obviously building, four-story buildings are squares, it's so big, it's darn, but it's so well run. And it takes it. It's not. That's fact. It doesn't run. So it's just made too much time. It's such a. Or there's only three. There's only originally got those same.
Like, and what we have now, there are so many. And I think that
No, it's trying to do that. But we're not looking at any levels. This will. I was asking. It's done. Scale. Our jail requires mass blasting costs. I don't know that they have. It's more of is. Okay. That's not right.
No, but expression by both states. That's kind of it doesn't have a real ethic that. Yeah. That's why it is. That's why it was. My understanding is by index. Well, I like that. I didn't say it. And then I don't know, that's that much. It's unknown.
That's that. Yeah. What if we make it shift with this saying? All about it. So.
That change.
Yeah, so that's
That's right. Even if we can the order is that might be we're just like building. That's like.
So market rate. Well, actually, it seems like there are some challenges. How it's like, and, you know, after the, that's now on the future, right? Proposal is the pilot class to address this, that is solves that. Papers. Just like if we had last debate. How about this question? Wow, I have seen my question would be like, I must say, I need this science. I didn't have to say, okay, well, here's the areas of my heart. You know, there's still something telling me, no, actually, I would want to see all of the film stuff. And I want to see all of the you know, this needs to be.
Been around. Don't know, I mean, a lot of these. Especially what one's being like out. It was still remarkable. Now there's but yeah, like, you know, I've seen some of these incidents, and it's the one thing I didn't like about people single statement that Apple just said it's not a free it's very sorry, it sounds like you're you know, that's the answer to part of that concentration. And all these other companies have for a lot of people involved in spread noise on the ground, right?
Yes. Or you feel, where you get right here. So that's.
It kind of gets back to like, really doing what they achieve. Unfortunately, that one, something I got, this is how the entire analysis is.
Well, I was.
It's not that I agree with them, I'm just gonna saying why it's that, here's last year.
Well, adult. And then he helped me. I know you know. So, yeah, like, exactly, right, there, you know, to make sense.
Alright, but thanks for stopping by. I'm sorry that this last meeting.
Yeah, that we're having. What are the actual? Like, if I'm totally. Why? And what so basically,
we look at what we have last year. All starting, well, stay where you're at. Over it or not, is yeah. Straight.
Earlier, I was advanced here. That's right. My daughter's kids. Yes. When you're they always have to be a back. Under budgeted, and then they have to. No one. Well, this is developers from New Jersey. Why they get donations? It's not like they haven't like they that's what we need $5 million. And you'll find out that a lot of them have to. They brought in a cheap labor.
I Russian views on it. I'm just in, just listening in the community. And it all like how much like feedback about in the sessions that we're talking about is. Have you guys done any deep dive into? Because well, they keep on saying, but what do they mean by it? And so I'm.
You know, it would be number one on my list, not a part of what our scope is. So what, all we can kind of do is encourage, what we would say, to take a look at it, like, and so my, one of our purposes that if there is a phase two and we get a chance to read. Kind of,
We can deep dive a little bit.
and it's, I think in everybody's best interest that that gets really unpacked, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, but.
Yeah, okay, I know you're busy trying to get there quick.
Oh, and it's okay. These look set up very nicely. I'm assuming we should leave them.
Yes, that would be awesome. Right. Okay, all right, so, I was just gonna take notes
Like here, and have it be more like. Sit here. This is your 5-minute warning. 5-minute warning on dinner. Yeah. I'm actually gonna leave this space. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Feature inner circle.
Oh, I'll do that.
That is this year's.
Yep, that's All right. Oh, yeah.
You're on the DST, you'll be on one of these two circles, you are not, and you're an observer, you'll be able to be on the outside. So if you're on the DST, you'll want to be on one of these two sets of chairs.
I think total,
Yes.
that should be good, I think. Okay. All righty. Hello, hello. All right. If you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If your hand is raised, that also means you are not talking to. All right, thank you all. I'm gonna go ahead and have DST members. If you are a DST, you are gonna come into this circle. If you do not find room for yourself in the outer circle, or if you are a brave person, you may be seated in the inner circle. You may, if you're a brave person, you can choose to sit in the inner circle to start. Or if you're last to the party, you might be seated in the middle circle. Thank you, Richard.
And I was there, so good.
And then if you are an observer for tonight's meeting, you are welcome to sit anywhere outside of this larger circle here. Okay. All right, so it's time to bring it all together. You got time to sit in individual stations. What I also heard in some of those stations is, wait, what if I had another station I wanted? What if I wanted another topic that I really felt like we needed to talk about to be able to come to a final decision as a group? Actually, I'm gonna take that one. Will you take that one? Thank you, Noreen. Okay, so this next piece we're gonna have happen as a fishbowl discussion. Raise your hand for me if you've ever been part of a fishbowl. Oh, okay, just one. All right, so here's how it's gonna work. We're gonna talk about a variety of things over the next about an hour period that we've got. And I'm gonna try and have us bounce around to different things so we can get to as many things as possible, knowing we're not gonna have enough time for any one of them. But what will happen is we'll have this inner circle here. These folks are our speakers at any given point in time.
You're what?
Speakers. Noreen, you should be comfortable with that.
I own that.
I knew you would, so I knew I could tease you a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so in the speaker circle, we will have a secondary mic for speakers in the circle. If you have the mic, you're the speaker. If you don't have the mic, you're not the speaker at the moment. You gotta pass it. There will be times where I'll ask you, okay, let's pass the mic. I want to hear from somebody else. When you're in that middle circle, you can talk between 1 to 3 times before we're gonna ask you to hop out to the outer circle. You may be asked to leave the circle in one of 3 ways. 1, you can do so with your own volition. You can say, I have said what I have to say. Okay, I'm gonna go sit out here, right? Another way you might be asked is a person from the outside circle might come along and just give you a tap. They might have noticed, okay, I think they talked about 3 times, right? If you get a tap, this isn't a slap, right? This is just a tap. You're headed to the outside circle. And the last way is that I, as a facilitator, may direct you to go to the outside circle. Once I feel like, okay, we've heard from folks. As the outside circle, you are in the role of observers. You are there to listen and think. And at times, you should also think, do I want to join this inner circle to talk as well? Then we have our community observers who will strictly be in an observation roles. Any questions about how the fishbowls could work? Yes,
If you leave or get booted, can you go back?
absolutely. Yep. Wait a little while and then you can go back. Yeah, Abby, what's your question? Yes, to speak, you have to go in the middle.
Are you making us?
Oh, I would love to hear from as many speakers as possible. I know that we will not have everybody in the inner circle. It is not required, but it is strongly encouraged that at some point you will. Great, good questions.
As we leave, can we nominate someone to go to the inner circle?
We're introducing new roles now. Just just give somebody the eye if you think they really should go in. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to do as a full group, regardless of whether you're in the inner circle or the outer circle, is we're going to do a temperature check, just so that you all can get a sense of the room about how you all are feeling about the decision about whether or not to move on to phase 2. This is not a binding agreement in any way at this point. We'll do the final vote at the very end. But then we'll do some reflections from the small groups. So I want to first kind of know, what are we hearing as areas of shared understanding? The purpose of this first phase is to say, what do we have in common that we can have a shared understanding around? And that's what I want to establish in this first phase. But then we'll also dive into some of those areas of disagreement that we had across the stations, and if there's other topics. Then we'll also debrief this process. How does this work? Would you recommend going to phase 2, but you think it should look a totally different way? Should we do all online engagement instead of an all in-person group? Should it be limited to 3 people who make the final call or recommendation to the city and YBHA? That's going to be that debrief of the process, and then we'll end tonight with the final vote. Okay, any questions there? Okay, so here we're going to start off with our temperature check. And the question is, given what we now know, do you believe it's worth moving into phase 2 to further define how to make Brown Ranch work? Or do you believe the challenges are so insurmountable that we should take the off-ramp now? Go ahead and give me thumbs up. I believe we should move on to phase 2. I have concerns, but I'm willing to proceed. And I believe that we should not. Okay, so just can take a look around the room and see where folks are at. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so now we want to give voice. This is an opportunity to give voice to the story behind this and weigh in as we get ready to go into that final discussion. I'm going to once again put up our working agreements here, and this is what I'm going to hold us to as a facilitator. The top section in particular, listening with empathy and curiosity, accept and value differing opinions, avoid judgment, stay open to persuasion, and recognize that each person brings a different lived experience. All right, so, I'm not going to jump into areas of disagreement. For this group, I'm going to start us off with At the end of phase one, what do you see as areas of shared understanding?
Just need to give that to the next one. Here we are.
Go for it.
And it should be on.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to give, sure.
I guess I would say that there's a need for more housing in Steamboat Springs. The current real estate market is out of reach for many people, and barring big changes will continue to be for a long time. We do have young people, young families, new people in the community, essential workers who need housing, which is largely unavailable. The city has tools to help with that. I don't think it's 100% of their responsibility, and I think since YBHA already owns the ground ranch, that should be part of that discussion, the exclusive outlet for finding us.
And we don't have to totally go around. You can pass it. Okay,
Because I'm gonna get everybody.
okay, we'll go around.
Thank
Okay, so go ahead and pass it back. All right, Dan, you go for it.
Sure, I think just one more thing to add to the shared understanding piece would be that we all value the character of Steamboat, and that maybe some of us define it differently, but we value the character of Steamboat as a town that exists not just as a tourist town, but as a diverse economy with various levels of income and businesses that don't exclusively cater to tourists. So.
I also think, which is something that I don't think we explicitly put on any of the boards, but that we all understand now how hard this is gonna be. That this is not something that we can breeze through, or the city's gonna be able to breeze through in a couple of weeks. That this is gonna require a ton of communications, a ton of work, from everyone involved in order to, presumably make it successful.
I agree with everything that's been said, and gaining trust from the community. I think there was a lot of trust that's been lost, and somehow that needs to be regained.
I think trust is hard for us humans, so you have to build it into the resolve and the results. What's happened here is what's happened always, and not just Steamboat. It's a question of people pick sides, and then they mistrust, and then they misrepresent. And how do you learn? How do you dive into it to find out which is the one right way? There isn't any. So then the question comes down to, and this is what I'm struggling, is how do we fabricate what we all love in a built community? It feels like Disneyland. This is what we're trying to do. Steamboat is wealthy. It is changing at its core. It's okay, so what we value, we're trying to put upon Ground Ranch. So that means it's gonna be a little enclave of what we would hold most dear, and I don't know that we can do that.
So as we go to, I think, our final two folks in the circle we haven't heard from, so far we've heard a couple of different things. We've heard some of the statements come out of the conversation of things about our values, things about what the nature of the housing need is. But as I heard Noreen and Richard just talk, I heard you also talk about the nature of the decision that you learned about through being part of this process, that this is difficult. And it is about our individual values and it is about our community values. And those are hard to reconcile. What would you add, Colin? What else is shared?
The original question was, what do we think we have consensus on?
Yeah, what do we have shared understanding
So
of?
I think a shared understanding is that we need a phased, measured, very thoughtful and intentional proposal to get community buy-in. That trying to do the all at once, something for everybody, silver bullet is not gonna get there. And I think that at least I feel from talking to both the community and people in this room, is that everybody agrees it needs to be phased and measured, and it needs to have a broad offering of housing types and income levels and all of those things.
I think what I kind of heard from this whole process is everybody is very passionate about Steamboat, and whether you're for Ground Ranch or against Ground Ranch or against the plan, it seems like we're all kind of fighting for the same thing, and that was, we really love Steamboat. This is how I think I love Steamboat so much, this is how I'm gonna get there. I love Steamboat so much, this is how I'm gonna get there. So we're essentially all fighting for the same thing. It was just, our different perceptions of what preserves Steamboat is where we were not coming together.
So each of you volunteered to be in the circle first.
No.
Oh, yeah, you got to. Apologies. Thank you for catching a misrepresentation. And something that you might have heard across the circle may not have felt like a shared understanding you were coming away with. So I'd love to get an opportunity for you to respond to each other as well. Is there something that you'd tweak or alter about somebody else's shared understanding that you just heard? Dan, and then we'll go to Richard.
Yeah, I would just, I agree for the most part with what everybody said, although one thing that Maureen mentioned, she used the word enclave. And I feel like that,
Use what?
the word enclave
Okay.
to describe Brown Ranch, which I think is accurate in a way, but I think that word has a certain perception. I don't think that, a development, a housing project, whatever the case may be, neighborhood where Brown Ranch is, would be any more an enclave necessarily than Steamboat 2 is, or Treehouse, or any number of the other, developments around town. I think that there's this perception that, and maybe she meant this way, or maybe she didn't know. I don't know, but, but my point is that I think that there's this perception of Brown Ranch as if it would be somehow like a slum or a second class place. And I think that when people think of it that way, they might hear the word enclave and that come to mind. So, yeah.
So real quick, you gotta have a mic to talk. Oh.
I'd be happy to like.
But I do love this process of
Yeah.
how can we ask each other questions to understand what these words mean to us.
Right.
I want to go to Richard next, but then we're gonna go to Noreen to clarify. Richard.
And that's perfect, because I want to ask Colin a clarifying question about what you mean by phased approach. Do you mean the plan is phased, or do you mean the actual implementation is phased?
And we'll go to, okay.
I asked one question, does he get to answer?
Yes, he does. I just wanted, Noreen's gonna go after this, yeah.
I think it's both.
Okay,
It's phased, and I've never thought that the annexation should be phased. I think we should annex all of that, but that's me speaking, not saying that's a shared thing, but I think that what we build and in what quantity should be the phased, so that 5 years in, we built, and these are purely just, discussionary numbers. We've built 300 units 5 years and the market has shifted. There's new products out there. There's a new demand in town. There's a new employer who moved here that's all of a sudden got a data center and they need a bunch of employees, whatever it is, right? That we can pivot and say, we need this now. The original thought was we were gonna build 120, condos. And now, after we saw how this first phase went, we go, no, we actually need it to look like this. Instead of just, we're building all of this upfront, this is what it's gonna look like, master plan. It needs to be measured and intentional.
I tend to be philosophical, in case you didn't get that. But I think, I said at one of the tables, we all had so much hope in this project. And we see ourselves as being less and less of what we all have been here for all these years. So it seems strange to me, it's not an enclave, quite frankly. It seems we need to be aware of the fact that we're trying to create something that is ethereal, which is a real town. This town's gonna change, and that's gonna change. We're all gonna change. So it's like, okay, I like the idea of the phased thought. And then, and I think that's good, because I remember when buildings were made for people to be affordable in New York. And within about 20 years, they had to be torn down. Because things changed and it didn't work and the psychology wasn't so good. My concern is we've got this little parcel of land and all around and all down the road, and even if the county does things too and breaks the 35-acre rule, And if it stays in private hands, it's all going to be expensive. So it feels to me we're trying to build a life for it. So I don't know how else to say. And I think we really need to be humble. And I'm also really tired of how people who have the ability to have some power, use it to demean the others. And specifically, I mean, the city and the housing authority. I was really horrified that there were notes up there to get rid of Jason. Don't let him get rid of it. I mean, good God, let's be polite. Let's hear people. You know, it's just, there's other bad dudes out there, not just one. I think I said my piece. Can I give this to somebody else?
You tapping out?
Huh?
Tapping out?
Should tap out.
See what happens.
That's a good
Okay.
one.
You can just hand that mic to the person next
I'm
to you.
gonna. I know it's good.
I was being polite.
Okay.
See, she nominated.
She did. So at this point, would love to just state, I appreciate each of these different perspectives, and I want to stay on the question for just a moment more of what is shared across this group. Do you have anything that you felt like has been missing that you'd want to add to this?
I think it's just, my favorite one was this is hard.
Okay, this is hard.
There's no writing answer.
All right.
I think I could add that I believe it felt like from the surveys that we all agreed that in a all of the above approach is what we're gonna need. It can't be A, it can't be just B, it can't be just C. It's everything needs to be on the table for the solution to the problem. Now, that's separate from, do we go forward with a property that looks like Brown Ranch, trying not to use those two words. Separate from that process, because we aren't here to decide, do we go forward with infill? We aren't here to decide, do we go and ask Hayden to build more housing for us? Our remit is to focus on the execution of, do we think the project that looks like Brown Ranch is feasible? And I think we kind of agree on that generally.
So at this point, I'm gonna hit you because you're at your 3, hop
That's fine
out,
with me.
nominate somebody else. And we're gonna start to move into, what are our areas of disagreement? And I'm gonna do, this is for the whole group, I want you to give me a finger poll. You got a chance to talk about a number of these topics in your groups, right? What is most important for us to talk about as a full group, to be able to move forward and make a final decision? Go ahead and give me a finger poll. Is it 1, we need to talk about our shared values? Is it 2, we need to talk about the problem and opportunity? Is it 3, we need to talk about possible scenarios, which I think is what Richard was just referring to of what's the right mix of things that we need to be able to meet our housing need? Take a look at those and go ahead on the count of 3. Give me your vote. What's most important for us to spend our time on in this group here? 1, 2, 3.
Well, we'll have to pick from first 3.
No, you can choose all 5. Yeah, you can choose from all 5.
Is this everybody or the inner circle?
Everybody. Yeah.
Are we putting up fingers and putting those numbers?
Yes, I am. I'm counting fingers.
What is our goal for the outcome of this?
It's just to have a dialogue on what remains and needs to be said at the end of phase 1, to then be ready to feel like we can confidently make a decision about whether or not to continue on to phase 2. Okay, so I've got a lot of 2s and 3s, some 4s. So we're gonna start with talking through the problem and opportunity. After you had an opportunity to discuss that, if you visited that station around problem and opportunity, what would you like to share as a reflection on what we need to know about that in order to move on to the next phase? Oh, I'm keeping my mic. Where did the other?
It's right there.
Here we go.
I actually didn't visit that today, but one of the things I've been kind of hearing a lot is, well, when I moved here, it was really work too, and I, worked 2 jobs, and one of the things that gets me on that is, like, I think as leaders and as people who really care about the community, we have a duty to make things not as hard for people coming behind us. I lead an all-female staff. I don't ever want them to go through some of the things that I went through in my career, so I just think one of our opportunities is to try to leave a better space, maybe. And if it wasn't easy for us, maybe we can make it easier for someone else. And with that, I will step off my soapbox and leave the circle.
Yeah, I would follow up on that. I agree that that should be our goal as a society in general, to build a better world for our, our progeny, the people that come after us. But I think that, kind of looking at number 5 on there too, I think it's pretty clear at a national level and even more exaggerated at a local level. It is just not possible to make it as somebody who is self-supporting and to live in Steamboat, right? I saw a lot of comments in response to the survey about like, yes, I moved here in the 70s and 80s. It was hard then too. I had to work 2 or 3 jobs. Sure, everybody who, as a young person who lives here, who's lived here for my entire adult life, I could work 3 to 4 jobs and there is no point at which I would be able to afford a house in Steamboat. It's not possible, right? So I think that's a little bit of a false equivalency, right? Like people say, oh yes, everybody struggles, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's very different for people growing up now than it was in the 70s and 80s. That opportunity is not there.
Who else would like to jump in? You wanna jump in, Jim? Just joined?
And I will step out.
No, I understand Dan and I appreciate that. What I wanted to say is a little different track here. I'd held up my 2, I want to talk about problem. And seems to me the problem is we have focused pretty much only on the Brown Ranch. So that's what I'm referring to here. The problem is that an annexation, any annexation, will very likely go to a vote of the people of Steamboat Springs. And so any personal opinion in here, which may be important, but it's not going to carry the day. What matters is our fellow residents of the city of Steamboat Springs. 6,000 to 7,000 of them show up in November and they vote. So even if all of us have great empathy for Dan and his absolutely accurate description of what it's like to move to Steamboat Springs these days, without the support of 6,000 to 7,000 people, or a significant majority of those, the Brown Ranch is never going to happen. And so the question that first needs to be asked before we start talking about the size and the phasing and whether it is a grocery store is, to what degree will the people of Steamboat Springs agree to growth as a solution for the problem that most of them agree to, which is that we have an affordable housing problem. Most people agree to that. But we need to ask them specifically, to what degree are you willing to allow more houses, a larger community, for the benefit of affordable housing at the expense of greater traffic, more congestion, a bigger city, and likely higher taxes? And that question has to be asked, it has to be answered, and then and only then can we have some idea of what the tolerance for growth of Brown Ranch might be, and what to start thinking about in terms of what that development looks like. I will say that that question is complicated by the fact that right now, the developer has a pretty bad reputation in town, and that needs to be fixed. Because anything associated with the Brown Ranch or the housing authority has some people in town saying, no, we don't want that, that's problematic. So you've got to have a developer that's trusted before you ever make this proposal. And you've got to have some understanding of how that proposal is going to be accepted by the community. Thank you. Somebody else.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Sit down, Jim.
Circle.
You got two more.
Go for it, Richard. What else would you add?
It's a chicken and egg thing. I think if we come to this we, the collective we, and I know there's a lot of opinions and some we're gonna agree on, some are gonna get everything that they want, some won't. But I think if we come with a viable plan that we can get the citizens of Steamboat to vote properly for Brown Ranch. I don't think they're gonna vote without something concrete to give them to vote for. I don't think they're gonna approve anything. So I think it's our responsibility to come together, to come up with some sort of a plan that we can then present to the citizens of our wonderful community. They all understand the need. They all realize that this has to happen. It needs to be open, transparent, well-studied, and well delivered. And I think they'll vote for it.
Well, in that vein, like you said, if we need to give them something, then part of this, we need to find out what they want. I think, and there's the opportunity, maybe the city could take, I mean, even putting a booth up at the free concert and be like, hey, 2 questions with Brown. How did you vote, or why did you vote against it, or what would you think you need? I mean, in my era, I think traffic, and that is a big problem. The grocery store is a big deal, and you can't make someone come in and put a grocery store. But we need to, I think, to get community buy-in, maybe there needs to be something up front that people can say, yes, this is a community benefit. There's a lot of things with my town hall plan, you need to provide a community benefit, and unless there's some benefit for the people to vote for Brown Ranch in, I can see them just sitting on the sideline saying, no, you know, I don't want it. What's in it for me? And maybe selfish, but people look at it that way. And I don't know, maybe we can come up with some reason if it is going to a vote and how to do it. And I like Colin's idea about a phased approach, because no one like the big idea and all in one type of thing, but it's great.
Brian, I'm gonna kick you out.
All right.
I want to say something in response to what Richard said. And I'm gonna put thoughts and words in your mind here, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when you said we all understand, or everybody understands the problem, I don't know. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's what you meant. I don't know that everybody does. Within this room, I know not everybody agrees that there is a housing problem within this community. I know that there are people who do not necessarily believe that there's a housing problem. I think part of what needs to happen, Jim, to your point, is when you go to the voters and you ask them, do you want to grow? But how do you want to grow? And I think that's part of going on to phase 2 is one element of the process here. It's coming up with a specific plan to present to the community about whether you say yes to it or no to it. And being very specific and educating the community on what it means to do this project or not do this project. You know, I think one of the things that's maybe missing is it's not whether or not we want to grow, it's if we don't grow, like what does it mean if we don't add housing to this community? What does that mean? Housing prices are going to continue to rise. Demand's not gonna dry up. But supply will, and housing prices are just going to continue to rise, and that doesn't matter if it's affordable, market rate, whatever, apartments. Without supply and an increasing level of demand, cost goes up.
And then we'll go to.
You
Haley.
wanna get in? Sorry.
Well,
If you're hot, go for it.
I think to the, you bring up a very good point, Jim, that I am, as we're finishing this last phase 1 meeting, I already feel this anxiety that I will feel until the vote.
I love where I work, which is Steamboat. And I love that I work in a job that allows me to really see the people of Steamboat. And not just, the tourists and, folks that live up in their enclave and don't really participate. But I don't live here, and I also very much love Haiti. And so I feel like I live in this dual place, where, let me try to put this correctly. To the vote, we have to remember that the people who may benefit most from what we're thinking this property may serve, or who we think this property may serve, they may not be here to vote yet. They don't live in Round County yet. They're here to take the retiring doctor's job in, 5 years. They may live in unincorporated Brown County. They may live in another municipality. So I hope that we can craft, I want to use the term craft, but it really is about crafting, a story that people can believe in. And who is the majority of our vote here? Is it homeowners? Is it folks in their 50s? Is it retirees? Because unfortunately, it will serve them to have Brown Ranch, because in 5 years, when their doctor retires, another doctor will be there, out of med school. Or you can take 1,000 examples of that, right? If we provide this housing for someone who takes care of this community. But those people may not be able to vote and already are here, or they're not here yet. And I think we have to craft that message to think about, like, okay, well, who is voting on this, and how do we make them care about something that they're probably never gonna step in?
Paul, who's next?
So the topic was problem and opportunity, and I think on that one, it showed we had almost 100% agreement that since 2019, town has changed and we need to do something for housing. That was like near unanimous. So the opportunity on a second bite at this apple is to get a better plan. I've watched multiple bond initiatives fail. I've watched everything in this town seems to fail twice before it gets the right plan that everybody will agree with. And they always say a good deal is when everybody feels like they didn't get everything they wanted, both sides. Maybe there's some truth to that. But I think that the first plan, besides being wildly too big, and there was a lot of distrust and transparency issues with housing authority and all of that, but I think the difference between government and bureaucracy, let's say, and the private sector is the ability to be nimble and creative. And government and bureaucracy lacks all of that. And in the private sector, if we had this problem, we would attack it, or else it means failure. We go out of business and lose everything, move away, whatever. So I think that on the second plan, we should focus on the things that weren't in the first plan. And maybe that means we carve off, and I'm not an expert, I don't know the acreage, but we carve off some percentage that's dedicated for mobile homes, tiny homes, fifth wheel campers, trailer, or whatever, that anybody can bring. I think a creative solution that the private sector would look at is we need to build stuff. We don't have enough tradespeople. We have empty land sitting there. And that to me is very obvious that there should be go to North Dakota where there's 1,000 man camp trailers sitting there empty because the oil fields are shut down. Buy a couple dozen of them, put them out there. Allow anyone who's a tradesperson who can show a paycheck from 804 inside the business that, hey, I worked 40 hours building something or contributing to the community. We'll let them live out there. And I feel like the government side of this whole equation, council, housing authority, whatever, tries to get everything right, tries to answer everything for everyone from the word go. And the only constant here is change. And we are going to continue to evolve, and whatever we come up with today will not look the same 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and certainly not 20 years from now. So a creative approach that says, hey, for 5 or 10 years, we're gonna put a trailer park over here because the land's sitting empty anyway. And let the people live in the trailer park that wanna live in a trailer park, or someone who's currently couch surfing or living 8 people to a 2 bedroom, double wide, or single wide rather in Tree Island, let them live kind of while they build this, everything that's gonna happen. Oh, that's my piece, and that's my 3 times, so.
Thanks, Tom. So across all of this so far, what I've heard is a variety of different things about what our problem and opportunity is. We started off with the idea that the problem and opportunity is the issue we're trying to solve, which Brown Ranch can be or could be a part of, housing, right? But I also heard that the problem and opportunity is about growth and who we are becoming as a community. I also heard the problem and opportunity is what can this community support in tactical terms in an upcoming vote? And also what it will support, not just in terms of what it can agree to, but what is our shared responsibility in face of a huge challenge like housing, and how will it change us as a community as well? There's also lots of things that people sprinkled in about what they think the solution is based on that problem and opportunity. Chris, what would you add?
I guess it's one of those 50-year-olds not yet retired. I mean, I think it's actually a pretty generous community. I do think 30% of people are always going to be no growth, like in 67, and if we could get back to that, that would be ideal. But I do think most of the people I talked to were concerned about the cost, with some of the other stuff, and the scale. And, I think to your point, if we could present phase 2, a plan that seems to go towards, to get to Colin's point, to, put something on there, try it, and see how the community evolves around it, because, mountain communities traditionally very cyclical, right? We are riding the absolute, top of the tsunami right now in terms of housing demand, housing costs, construction costs, all the inputs are super high. But if you look at the history of probably Steamboat, go back, there's gonna be some adjustments over time. So I think it's trick is to present something that's reasonably palatable to a majority of people, all of whom were 20 at one point in time and trying to make their lives work, so they're not completely, unfamiliar with that idea. And so that's my thought is, I think there's demand, package it in an attractive way that seems reasonable and leaves room for change in the future. And I've got a lot of the community members who didn't support the last one and support the next one. But I don't think anyone wants to sign up for a line check and see how we. And you're right, you came back.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make a point, then I'll get out of here. People, we've been talking about growth a lot. And I think that a lot of people in this room and a lot of discussion I've heard are conflating two things. They're conflating growth with character, right? Or lack of growth with the character that we all talked about, that we value in Steamboat. And I would like to say that Steamboat is growing. Steamboat always has been growing. Steamboat will continue to grow, whether we want it to or not. Economically speaking, we don't want us to stop growing. That is bad for our economy. That's bad for the local workforce. What I would say is that the decision that we're making here, just kind of zooming back out, not talking about the plan or the specifics of it, but just yes or no, should we do something with Brown Ranch? The idea is that yes, we're going to grow, but are we going to grow in a way that helps foster and maintain a diverse local economy in a way that fosters and maintains the character that we all claim to care about so much, right? When I moved to town, it was all about like, oh yes, Steamboat was a working class town before there was a ski resort here. There's a community, there's businesses that are independent of this tourist industry. That is dying here in Steamboat. And when people talk about wanting whether we should grow or not, nobody's saying, oh yeah, let's, we're gonna deny permits for things like the Stockman or, other market rate multi-million-dollar houses. Nobody's talking about stopping growth on that front. But what we're talking about with this affordable housing initiative is, as we grow, are we going to maintain and make sure that there is room for our shared character that we all value to persevere, right? Or are we going to make sure that as we grow, there's room for the middle class to grow and not just the upper class? That is the question that I would ask. And I think that you know, if you brought that to the voters as a very specific, it's interesting because on paper, the initiative last March was about pretty cut and dry. Should we annex this land as part of the city? Right? It wasn't about the plan in place. It wasn't about any of that kind of stuff. But that's what it became about, right? There were partisan lines that were drawn and, you know, information on either side and all of that, right? But I think that if you, it became about the plan in place and whether people thought it was dealing with traffic, you know, appropriately and all these different issues. But I think if you put it to people like, hey, we have this free land, should we use it to do something about our affordable housing problem? I think they would say yes. Period.
And then, so let's go to Jim, but then we're gonna go here. And then we're gonna go into question 3.
The devil's in the details, and that vote was very much about the plan. And the first thing that people heard was that it was 2,264 units, and they said, absolutely not. I don't care if it's over 5 years or 500 years, and no. Do not underestimate the anger in this community over the congestion and traffic. And people here recognize there is no good solution.
As commuters, we.
Wait, you don't have a mic. Hold on, Jim.
It was determined by a consultant in the late 90s that the only way we can deal with this problem is to get people out of their cars. And we've had fairly limited success at that. Again, it's up to those folks out there, and they're thinking of themselves, they're thinking of their quality of life. And I appreciate everything you're saying, but it's gotta carry the day with those folks that are living here and sitting in that traffic and cursing. That is the big hurdle.
All right, Jim, go ahead and pass this mic over here.
And now I really am moving.
Well, I think the fear, I've heard a lot of, we're talking about disagreements, so we have heard a lot of disagreement. That's a good example.
Just a little louder.
Sorry. We have heard a lot of, we're talking about disagreements, so we have heard a lot of disagreement. That's a good example about growth. And I will just say, I think when we spoke at the very first meeting, what I recall people saying was that we value being kind and neighborly and a welcoming community. And I don't know that we get to also say, but I get to choose the people I want to be kind to or welcoming to. And I think when we say, well, you have to live and work in this exact thing for me to help you, or you have to have this exact career, or you have to have lived here X number of years, or I won't be as welcoming and kind. Because I'm hearing some, you know, we don't want people coming in from outside. That kind of concerns me because I'm not sure it matches what we defined early on as real Steamboat. Values of being kind and welcoming and neighborly to each other. And I think there are ways that we can work through a lot of things like traffic congestions and various things, but I think keeping that spirit for me, being in a smaller mountain town, being welcoming and kind is a big part of it. So I guess I would just like to hear a little bit more of that, but I think zooming out a little bit more, you asked which ones we wanted to talk about to be able to move to the next vote. And I think it was, I didn't answer because I don't need to talk about any of these to move to the next vote. We've been presented with expert information. I have the information I need to move to that point. And I think for me, I'm ready to move to that phase 2 if we're able to and start having those discussions.
And then Haley, did you want to share?
I can.
Okay.
I guess, I always can. Great point, Trish. Yes. Okay. Well, I guess I've been sitting on it and I understand that people are probably really tired of me talking about being the hating person here. We have 2 of us. But I guess, and this does go to possible scenarios, and I do totally, trust me, I hear you on the traffic thing, y'all, like more than you know. I hear you on the traffic thing, everybody, 6,000 of us, every day, who don't live here, understand why you don't want more traffic in Steamboat, I promise you, we get it. So in terms of trying to keep this with possible scenarios,
Of course, we've heard that one of the possible scenarios is to, and we've heard some dissent about the, appetite for growth in the city. And one of the possible scenarios for dealing with our housing problem in Steamboat is to push it to outlying communities. It's a broken record at this point for me to say this in this room. I think I've said it enough, but, that transportation, when we got the topic of transportation on, I believe, the second meeting, that really was kind of a eureka moment for me where I could visualize what the valley would be in 20 years if we just go with infill, if we just go with pushing it to outlying communities, because we have great examples an hour away to the south or 2 hours away to the south. And to Noreen's point about this enclave, like to have this place, this space that we're, coveting and trying to protect. I absolutely feel that angst about seeing this change in Steamboat, and everybody's trying to like get back on their heels and figure out how do we go back a little bit, or how do we slow this down. I just want to say that the outlying communities are preserving their own enclave. Like we're trying to do the same thing. And anything that Steamboat decides on is a Yampa Valley decision. It is not a city decision. It is a Yampa Valley decision. And yeah, sure, the dissenter in here can be like, well, people don't care about it, so whatever. But I'm just trying to like put it out as much as I can that we can very easily become these valleys that we don't want to become because of this vote. And I hate to put it down to just that, but I don't know what the other options are.
So we started, go ahead and pass Nick.
And traffic, yes, traffic has to come with, traffic solutions have to come with that, RTA, please.
There we go.
On an RTA.
Years. Yeah. Sorry. I want to say one last thing about, and this is kind of Tricia's point, and I think everything's finite. Land is finite, money is finite, road carrying capacity is finite. At some point, there has to be some box around what we as a tiny little community without unlimited resources can provide to people. And I think the goodwill is there to, yes, keep a balanced community. You want families, you want people to move here and work, but you can't provide everything to everyone. There's just the resources just aren't there, the land isn't there. I would say, no, I think that at some point, as we go to this next vote, you have to frame it in the way of what is appropriate, what can people buy off on. And again, that's gonna be a wide spectrum, but I just, every time at some point, there's gotta be a limit. It's, most places it's organic, right? Most places aren't landlocked, and I lived in LA for 25 years, so you want to talk about traffic, I can count literally thousands of hours, and I still live life, I'm not that bothered about it, it's like good times, but so I would just say the understanding that in Steamboat, with people's goodwill, with the money, with the available land, with the roads, and then CDOT, all that stuff, there's a finite amount that we can do. I think it takes goodwill and a good effort to get what we can do, get it done, and see what happens over time. So that's me.
And you said you were gonna pop out.
Yes, that's the third one.
Great. Thanks, Chris, for being one of our first to come in. So we've started to transition. We've been talking about what is the problem and opportunity. We're gonna transition fully into how does Brown Ranch fit into the multitude of scenarios the community has to meet the housing need? And what is the takeaway that we want to come out of this first phase with about that question that helps to inform whether or not we should consider moving into a phase that builds out what would that plan look like? Abby, can I put you on the spot?
My brain is still on the other question.
Okay, just talk about the problem and opportunity, and then the next person is gonna go to question.
Very good. You're rebel. The Rolodex is going. I think for me, the thing that keeps coming up, we're talking about what is a good plan and what is a plan that can get approved. And why are people voting the way they are? Is it in self-interest? It seems like probably. So then the question is, what do we owe each other as a community? Why do people feel threatened and why does Brown Ranch feel threatening as it was in the previous plan? Is it traffic or is it this underlying feeling that the community is changing, that the world is changing, and where are those threats coming from? Is it from something as simple as traffic? I don't think it is. I think we have a lot of scapegoats going on. I think the negative parts of our community are not coming from these little things. I think it's these big systemic issues. Where is the money coming from in our community? Is it coming from good things, or is it coming from people who were involved in terrible things like making weapons, like exploiting workers? And is that what's going on in our entire country? And I'm gonna bring it back. My point is, there's so much going on in our country right now, and there's so much division. And I think that anytime there's an issue that can be politicized in any way, it's going to be. But is Brown Ranch really political? I don't think it's about traffic. I think it's about race. I think it's about class disparity. And I think it's about a sense of fairness, just like all of the other issues going on in our country. So I think how do you depoliticize this issue and address, create communications that connect our community on the things that we all care about and what we believe Steamboat really is. And now I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm sad.
Well, Dan, I'm wondering if,
Get out of here.
no, you're good, but. Okay, we'll go here, and then I'd love to hear from some of our new folks that joined the circle. And so, Richard, at this point, we're talking through how Brown Ranch fits into the variety of different options we have to meet our housing.
So I'm a big advocate on infill housing.
Yes, hold on.
I'm a big advocate on Brown Ranch. I'm a big advocate on outlying communities. I think all three are part of the scenario that needs to be fixed. Infill housing can start tomorrow if we have the will. We can start solving the problem. Brown Ranch is a piece. It's an important piece. It's something that should move forward. It should move forward with a generalized plan. And sorry. And I think it's important, but I think all three scenarios are important. I think all three scenarios need to be looked at as we start a solution to affordable housing and inclusionary zoning.
I'm just gonna say one thing and then I'll tap out. I am hopeful of Brown Ranch being an opportunity to create a scenario, create a plan, create a opportunity that people can support. I don't presume that the prior version that had traffic study the foregone conclusion. So I am optimistic. I am in support of moving on to phase 2 because I want to see what is possible with Brown Ranch as a tool towards this problem that's been identified. And to those of you who are in the group with me, there are a lot of different scenarios here. You could build one house on there and give it away for free, or you could build 10,000 houses on there and charge $1 million a house for them. I don't know, but a presumption that just because we move forward and look at what might be possible on Brown Ranch is not a presumption that it has negative impacts on the community, in my mind.
We're gonna go to Brian next, and then we'll go to Michael. I'm gonna give you a warning, we're gonna keep talking about this, but this group may also, we're gonna transition into actually debriefing this process and what would be needed in phase 2. So we're gonna get to hear from a couple of folks, and then we're gonna transition into that. Go for it, Brian.
Okay, so
I guess my piece is gonna sound a lot like it did in the small group over in the housing need, so for those of you who are with me in that, I apologize. When we're thinking about the different solutions, especially within these three. The thing that I keep coming back to is the economic disparity that the housing demand study showed us regarding what locals can afford and what market rate housing is. And we have current market rate housing being developed next door to Brown Ranch and other places in town that is not even remotely close to what we've seen our 80 to even 200% AMI town members can afford. So when we're looking at different solutions, I don't think that as long as we rely on enough outlying communities, or as long as we add more density to the rest of our town, that we're going to all of a sudden get affordability. We're not going to be able to provide housing at this point where our world is, honestly, and our town is just a microcosm of that. Unless we look to find a unique solution that I think the housing authority is uniquely positioned to be able to offer. And I mean that in the sense of being able to offer deed restrictions on locals' housing to ensure that that happens. It comes with different opportunities for grants and offsets of costs. And so it is far and away the closest, if not only is dramatic, closest of those three opportunities for us to actually be able to provide housing to our workforce. While I'm on this rant, I'll go back to your first thing with the problem, and I think that that's really what it comes down to, is if we want to provide housing to our workforce, we need to really actively look at that solution. And I think we should be looking out for our local workforce, because I think that when people jump into, we love the character of this town, what I would be hard pressed to believe is that anybody is suggesting I love the character because it is quickly being gentrified into being in the $2 to $3 to $5 million homes to the 1% affordability in our nation. I doubt that's what most of us mean. And that's what will happen if we don't fund a solution. So that's what I would contribute to the problem.
Sit over here.
Thank you. I have this all in my head, hopefully I can regurgitate it properly. I think there's really three options. You can go back in time, you can do nothing, or you can do something. And if we had the first option available, I think we would have done it already, logically. So that leaves us doing nothing or doing something. And what, we still clearly disagree on at least degrees of how each of these solutions works, whether or not it's truly going to be affordable or not. And that idea of wanting everything to be perfect is going to lead us down the direction of doing nothing. We have to, going back to the idea of us wanting to be kinder to people and wanting to consider the perspectives of other voters. That's what we need to understand when we present this to the community. The community needs to understand they're not voting for something that's perfect or not. They are voting they're not voting to go back in time. They're voting for whatever is the most viable path forward. Some people say they don't want to have more traffic. Well, the alternative to doing nothing is actually more traffic, because people are coming in from Hayden, or Oak Creek, or wherever. It's not, the perfect solution doesn't necessarily exist, but I think it's much more likely that someone living in Hayden now is likely to bike 3 miles from west of town than they are from 20 miles further west of town. Is that going to be everyone biking those 3 miles? No, I might be one of them, except that I already live closer than that. So, we have to come together with the voters need to understand what the actual options are, what they need to be able to envision what the future looks like with these different alternatives. I think they struggled with the previous plan as to what the ultimate outcome was going to be, because people saw how big it was, and you could tell them all you wanted, oh, that's going to be 20 years down the line. And I understood that potentially, but not everyone is, or they say, well, even if they can envision it going slowly over 20 years might look very different to them than it does to me or someone else. So it's getting people to understand what's the least worst alternative and how can we make that one the best.
Real quick, JJ or Clark, what's my hard time
and on this section.
It's a hard time for like what we can make work.
The hard test.
Well, I would say.
So, I thought that-
We're good, no, we're good. I would say, let's make sure to, Bill, what do you think? Let's say, give us another 11, 12 minutes?
Okay,
Yep, I mean, we're ready to think of where we need to be for the rest of this, so.
okay. And if anything, what we'll just have to do is we'll have to speed up a little bit of, we want to have everybody be able to go around and share their final vote and one sentence of why they're making that vote. But that's the piece that we might have to just speed up at the end, but I feel like this is the conversation that's also needing to happen. I am gonna switch us a little bit into a debrief of phase one. To say, there's two pieces of this, right? This is, what did we discover during phase one that leads us to believe that we need to move on to phase two to think more specifically about what the design would need to be to answer all of these different questions that you've raised in the problem. But there's another piece of this that's what's the right process as a community to get you there. And so I want to reflect a little bit on how this process of the DST plus these other kind of channels of engagement have been in small groups that we've engaged in community workshops, and to know what's going to be the right forum to have this conversation moving forward to get us to the answer to the problem that you all have described. So you can answer any one of those questions. What was this process like for you? What surprised you? What do you appreciate? And what would you design differently about phase two? Go for it.
I think thinking about the last one, why would I change the process to be in phase two? I think everybody here, I love when people come out and volunteer, but I do think that the people that participate in phase two need to be more representative of the people that are actually going to live or they have housing needs in this community. I think a lot of people here have secure housing and struggle with seeing the perspectives from the other people that don't have secure housing or that are in community long hours or so I think making it a different process for how to apply to be in the committee would be essential, having different voices and perspectives, because I don't think that this group is representative of the people that need to solve this problem.
Totally agree with you for saying that. I would also thank you guys all for your work, by the way. I don't mean to jump to phase two to say you've done nothing good, but you don't mind it.
Tell me that, I won't be wrong.
No, you guys, I'm so impressed, but what I was going to mention is I feel like we're having the same conversations that I was having with everyone I knew before the vote. So I think it truly is a communications issue more so than anything else. And of why the vote didn't pass the first time. I think it's a communication misinformation issue. So I think that in phase two, that really needs to be addressed of how just to pass something on a bill in the modern world in a situation where the entity that's making the thing happen is legally not allowed to educate people on it in a meaningful way at no fault of their own. It's the law. So that would be my whole issue. And now I'm gonna leave.
I'm gonna just for a quick moment. I'm gonna, how do you pronounce your name, Liliana?
Yeah.
I'm gonna disagree with Liliana, not because I disagree with her, but because what happened with the last process was we heard from a lot of the people that wanted that housing. And then the voters were a completely different makeup. What we need is for the voters to hear the stories of those people and understand what they're up against. Because I think the problem is we could ask people all day what kind of housing they need, but if the people with housing are the ones that are voting for it, we kind of gotta get them on our side. And if that's the case, I don't think people really understand the full breadth of it. I don't even fully understand the plan of it. I mean, I know there's probably people living in sheds, in campers, and I don't know where all these places are. Generally, you don't want people to know where you're living if you're not living in a place you're supposed to be living. We need to hear those stories from people and make the community understand, our community is more than just the people that are able to show up to these meetings and and participate. There's a lot of people that are the backbone of our community that we're not gonna hear from unless we go out of our way to do it.
Did you wanna say something?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you representing this community here. And I wish there were more of you in this room right now. The Latinas, right? And I feel like I agree with Michael as well on what he said about the voting. I'm not a voter. I'm registered in Wyoming, full disclosure. So, but, I'm here, my position, is voting for the land itself, the living, breathing land. And everyone just talks about it like it's already a piece of cement, but it's not. It hasn't been destroyed yet. There's critters out there. There's, a whole ecosystem out there. There's trees, there's water running. And I just hope to hell that it doesn't get thrown under the bus like it has in so many of these discussions in phase one. It's been like, oh, well, let's trade off the open lands. Let's trade off all the parks. Let's trade off everything because it's gonna make the whole project more expensive. If we have any open land, we have to pave it all. And, I just disagree with that. And I don't know if any of you in this room are on my side or not. I feel like the Lone Ranger here from the get-go on this. And I am a property owner in West Steamboat. We've been out there a long time and it's a very rural community. I don't like the thought of it turning into a giant subdivision with everything you guys have in town already. We don't need a grocery store or a coffee shop and all that bullshit out there. What we need out there is what Colin was talking about. And bravo on that idea, getting the man camps, those trailers from hardly anything in South Dakota and make, a viable community out there with people who really need the housing. Now, I don't know, I'm not talking about all these young professionals here. Sorry to say, I'm talking about the construction workers and the people who are cleaning the hotel rooms. And you are the one who mentioned a race issue, aren't you, Derek? And thank you for that.
Nope.
I mean, because this is a real big thing. Our restaurant workers, our construction workers, our real laborers in this community are without housing. And for us to think for a moment that we're gonna build a diversified community for doctors coming in there, I mean, you got your heads in the wrong place. And thank you for that.
Yeah, so as we've started to debrief the process, I've heard a couple of things just about who's a part of that process. I've heard that how we communicate about the process and what topics are on the table in the next phase too. Needing to talk about the land itself, that role, as well as what I hear as another important topic is who the housing is. That would need to be talked about in phase two. Charlie, what would you add to? What do
Charlie?
Well,
I think we're losing land and pave it for a living. Yeah, so I mean, earlier tonight, I was accused of kind of torpedoing the process, and that was a fair accusation. It's, it's pretty easy in an advisory room to throw a grenade, and kind of by the time the moderator gets done cleaning it up, it's run out of time and gone. But if I'm honest, that comes from this sense. I, maybe like many of you, stepped into this committee thinking I was doing A, and, very early on found out we were doing B. And, the B I thought that we were doing was, or the A that I thought we were doing was the how. I took it as an inherent, fact that something could happen at Brown Ranch. Now, I think I understand a lot of the reasons why the last thing, and the thing before that, and perhaps the thing before that, were not the things that we could do at Brown Ranch, but this is a tremendous gift to the community, and something, whether it was one house or 10,000 for $1 million each, something could be done at Brown Ranch that would be helpful. So perhaps I've been more than willing to throw grenades and push back against every minute of the process thereafter, because to me, one of the email that could have been a text, or frankly, it was an email that could have been, it was 5 different meetings that could have been a thumbs up vote. I'm ready to move on to the how. But perhaps in a deeply unpopular way, which is what you set me up for brilliantly. And no offense at all to you as well, I don't necessarily agree that the best path forward is to accumulate as many perspectives as possible, and I don't mean that in any offensive way. We have done this 3 times over in this community. We have generated more community input than we could possibly put together over a lifetime. We have had community meeting and committee meeting and community meeting, and committee meeting ad nauseum. And at this point, what we've done is stack up a list of wants and needs that's so expensive that we can never afford to do it. So in my view, the next process here is not this. It is to take 8 of the most capable people in this community. God knows I'm not on that list, but put the people that know how to put these things together and put them in a room. We know the wants and needs. But now it's time to put one sentence on the table. Is this about affordability? This is the FLA Housing Authority. Are we trying to provide affordable beds for the community? Because if we are, every hinge point, every decision in the process needs to land there. And if you put the 8 people in the room that build these things and somebody else that paves and does terrible things to the environment, let them come forward and try, because when we put 40 people in a room, all A personalities, and everybody who wants to hold the mic, what we end up with is a laundry list of wants and needs. And my fear for this process, my fear for phase 2, is that's exactly what we end up with. Is we end up with a very beautiful plan, and it's got white picket fences, and it's got all the nice things, and it's got all the different communities, and it takes care of the land, and does everything else. And we've done exactly what the housing authority just did, and the 2 private developers before then. And we put it to the community, and I think, if you put Jim, wherever Jim is, Jim and I in a room, and you gave us 10 topics, we would agree on exactly 0.5 of them. But in this, I think he's been insanely clear-headed. The hinge point here is the community that has to vote on this process. There's 6,000 people that you need to agree to this. And by and large, you need to simplify it down to a scale, a phasing, a program that works. Now, have we done it before? Has the housing authority been successful? Of course they have. They've been building, the housing authority's gone from 1 lot to many. And what is the metric, like 5 million to 35 million overnight, to what feels like overnight to many of us. Lots of development has been approved, moved through, and the community has continuously funded with more and more tax dollars that process. So certainly there is some scale at which the housing authority can provide a development to this community, Brown Ranch, that we can start with and move forward with. But it can't be this add-on process ad nauseum where we end up with everything we've ended up with the last 3 times. I don't know that I need to be here anymore. That's my entire soapbox.
And so, real quick, we haven't heard from 2 folks. Is it okay if I pass the mic to them first? And then I'm gonna get us to our final vote. And I'm gonna let you go, but it's just gonna be real brief.
Great.
So what Charlie said, I agree with some of it. Well, I want to be clear too, and I wasn't gonna come up here because I do feel like this process has kind of created somewhat of an echo chamber, and people really don't want to hear what I had to say. I was a mild no coming in, and now I'm a hard no. And not because I disagree that we absolutely need housing. I absolutely, I have one little apartment that I rent at half market rents. No, I don't get a deduction on the 12 grand that I lose every year. But the things that people in this room asked for, projects that were done, what are the demographics? What are people paying? Who's living in those? Who did we provide housing for? How much did it cost? On and on and on. And we never got that information. And the way you can, those projects were little bitty. And I'm all about little bitty projects, because if you do little bitty and you lose little bitty, then you don't lose much. You're doing $1 billion project and you lose, or you messed up huge for the community. And so until we change the process, until we're extremely transparent, where we get experts on both sides, where we get a Charlie and a Jim, that we can visibly see both sides of the equation. And until we see what we've done, I don't think we should move forward. I think we should halt, get transparency on the table. And it's not about messaging. Every community thing I've gone to, coffee with council, any person you talk to from YDHA, they tell you, oh, well, it's just about the messaging. It's not the messaging. People are smart. It's about giving them honest. They want to know honest. When somebody says, I thought we were gonna get housing, and everybody that moved into there, I don't even know, they moved in from outside of the community. And for me personally, whoever said, where's your doctor coming from? I agree. We need doctors and teachers. They need to know where they're gonna live first. I clean my own house. I have my 14-year-old mow the lawn. I think that's secondary. And that's my 2 cents.
What was the process like for me? I agree with Charlie. I came in thinking it was gonna be something else. I thought we would address a lot of the mistakes that were made prior. And I thought that we would be presented with more options of what we could do going forward. So maybe we could change that process in phase 2. And kind of like you were saying, address and get more information from the YBHA and all the things that you just asked for and have been asking for the last 3 months. Yeah.
And I want to just clarify, I think you actually agree on one thing, that you came in for different things, but what I heard is that you actually disagreed about what you came in thinking you were getting. Is that true?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay, Brian, close this out.
Yep, just gonna summarize real quick, what is kind of an agreement, but kind of a disagreement, with both of your points. Is that I think that as we hopefully move forward, I'm definitely in support of moving to phase 2. But one thing that surprised me was that we didn't address the large amount of misinformation that was prevalent in the last vote. So we're talking about the ways that we should do solutions while at the same time talking about all the things we hated about the last one that was voted down, which were largely not true. I've heard very, very many things that were simply untruths from that. And so I'm worried about how we move forward and come up with solutions and then be surprised that a lot of those solutions might look familiar, but didn't even know that that happened because there was a very aggressive campaign to say the opposite of what a lot of the things that were being proposed were. So I don't know how we move forward unless we address that elephant in the room. There's a lot of truths to be brought to light. I happen to have had the opportunity to hear a lot of the presentations the first time. And so I could hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, as well as hear in the community and read the letters to the editor that were saying the exact opposite. We need to address that otherwise, and I think that's where I'm trying to tie into your point, is that it really doesn't matter how pretty and how white picket fencey it is and how paved it is, unless we actually talk about what it was the first time, which had tons of open space, which had a phased approach. And I don't really want to defend that design so much as I want to bring to light how to move past that and how to make sure that we are talking honestly about what's ever being proposed. So that we can be honest about it if anything ever gets to the ballot.
So I know that this is not at all satisfying in terms of the length of time we've gotten to debrief this process. You will get a follow-up survey shortly from Brad, actually, from the city to evaluate how this process has been. That gives you a lot more space to talk through this. I'll say just thank you because you all have made our job very easy. This is clear consensus. We're ready to go. No, not at all. And in fact, I'm gonna have all of us now stretch out the circle a little bit to bring everybody in.
Yeah. Wider hair. So. Hi. I'm sorry.
All right. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna ask you all in this next phase, we have to accept some amount of non-closure. There wasn't full agreement that was reached in that final discussion, but says exact clarity on what the problem and opportunity is, exact clarity on how Brown Ranch fits into the larger issue of meeting your housing needs as a community. And yet we do have to make one decision as part of this process. Which I'm gonna pass it over to Bill.
I'm excited to support your conclusion here. All right, so, and I'm sorry, I'm looking, trying to see if our folks that have tried to join online are still with us,
Yeah.
and might want to also have their voice in here. As Kel said, you've seen this slide before. This is how we tried to phrase this moment as just, the pause between phase one, phase two. Do we take the off ramp or no? You did take the off ramp or not? You did the temperature check before. We just wanted to give you one chance to go around. So we've got 15 minutes and there's about 30 of us. So it's about 30 seconds each. Just kind of where you came down to just a couple of words, what's behind it, what's the reason, what are the words you want to kind of explain about that vote. So I'll go to that slide if it's helpful to. Oops. And we'll just start here with Leon and go around.
Yeah, I believe we should move on to phase two. Like I mentioned it over here, one of the tables today. I'm thinking forward. I know we have some issues from the past, we can learn from the past, but we gotta look past the past and move forward. We have a unique opportunity as a mountain community to, we have this gift of land. I don't know what that looks like. It's part of the puzzle that we've all talked about. It's a much bigger puzzle with the affordable housing issue here. But we have a unique opportunity to move forward in some capacity, and I think we need to take that opportunity. And we have a lot of good people in this room. There's a lot of good minds here. I've heard some great comments. It's I've heard some people that I may not disagree with, but I hear their viewpoint. I think we all have to embrace that. We need to be able to hear everybody's viewpoint and respect it, like we talked about. But I think we do have that unique opportunity, and I think we'd be remiss if we did not act on it, so.
I moved to also move to phase two. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, people truly need housing, and I think we all agree with that and hear that across the board. Essential workers, and if we really want to maintain the community and the resources that we have now, we have to have people that have a reasonable place to live. So my vote is definitely to go ahead with phase two, and I feel like we have a wonderful opportunity and a gift here to do this and do it well. My vote would be also to move forward. I thought about this coming into this meeting today. I have a 14-year-old and I also have a 27-year-old that grew up here in Hayden and graduated from Hayden. My son goes to school in Steamboat. When I'm driving in front of Brown Ranch in 15 years, I am with my son. I wanna say, hey, like this whole neighborhood, we were part of it. We were part of the decision to move forward, and I'm happy that we have this community where you have friends, where you have the opportunity to maybe live here after you graduate from college. I want to give that opportunity to my kids to come to stay in Steamboat if they want, or to never leave if they want. So that's my goal.
I'm definitely a yes to move to phase two. Great opportunity. We have the land, and it's a little amorphous to say that what the sense of community is, but I do think the sense of community is genuine. I think people want people to be able to live here and have good lives, and there's some part of that factors in the Brown Ranch. Hopefully we can come up with something that people will support.
I'm also supportive of phase two, mainly because I think it can be used efficiently as, like I mentioned a couple meetings ago, it kind of like a land savings account for our community. I think if we combine it with other approaches to use our existing land efficiently and build it more slowly and deliberately, that the community might have a better chance of supporting it, and I'd like to see that happen.
Good point, Michael, that land bank idea. I'm only in favor of it, and with the caveat that it be treated respectfully, the land itself. There's some agricultural component, and that it honors the Latino community, and it is for low-income housing and not for doctors.
I think in order to pay for something as expensive as the Brown Ranch, you need some doctors. I think that there's major hurdles in front of any annexation in West Steamboat. I think phase two needs to focus on that. I think those hurdles need to be understood, discussed. I think polling needs to be done in this town to ask people the question. In exchange for affordable housing that the vast majority of us know is a problem, what are you willing to give up? You need to know some idea of what that answer is before we can design any project.
Jim, what was your official vote?
My official vote is a sideways. I'm willing to go forward, but I've got concerns.
I think our connection to the land is what makes us human. We've been given a gift of land, which is something so rare in the 20th century. And the thing that makes the land, makes us human, is the people who live there. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to honor the people who live there and restore a bit of our community's soul. So yes, I think we should move into phase two.
I believe we should move into phase two. I believe part of the work in phase two would be to discover what the benefits to voters who are going to be making the decision are, and help them to find out why they would want to do this.
I would also be a sideways vote for many of the same reasons that Jim pointed out. No matter how we all feel about it, the reality still is, it's got to be passed by a vote, and I think we have to be cognizant of that. I'm also willing to proceed, but I think that we should also explore other opportunities that are out there, and we haven't done that much in phase one. I don't know that we'll get to do that in phase two, but I won't be able to vote on it ultimately anyway. And if I had been able to, I just would have wanted to know what due diligence was done for other opportunities for affordable housing here, or I just totally approved the expenses for the Brown Ranch.
As I said earlier, I'm a down, and I wasn't a down before. The ironic thing is people who donated that money happen to be rich, as everybody knows, which everybody trashes rich people moving into town. And they don't get a vote either. I have to know exactly where they live. But I feel like all the issues that happened, and I wasn't here for the first number of processes, but all the things that were wrong in the process in the vote continued, and I feel like they continued in this process. And I think transparency is huge, and everybody should be well informed. And I'm curious if there's anybody else's vote that changed through this process, because I know what the position were of a lot of people, and they all have seemed to stay the same. And I'm just curious if anybody changed their vote.
I'm in support of moving on to phase two, basically because I'm hopeful for the opportunity to explore what this might be and to explore what the process could look like to restore confidence, to restore and build, build support within the community for this next.
I would be supportive of moving to phase two. The people that I've talked to that did vote for it the first time around, most everybody said, hey, it was the wrong plan. It's not that I don't want people to live here or I don't, support this. It wasn't right for them. So I think we have this huge opportunity if we want to continue kind of this thriving economy that we have. We need to open more people to own businesses and have employees. So it's too good of an opportunity to, I think, not at least continue exploring it.
I'm a sideways vote. I'm very process oriented. I don't believe the process that we had going in here was really indicative of trying to solve the problems from the first vote. And I'm very concerned that phase two will be a continuation of phase one. And if it is, we're gonna lose the vote again.
I'm on sideways.
I agree that we probably need to speak to the people who voted it down and address their concerns, or it's just gonna keep on being voted down.
I'm a thumbs up. I believe we should move into phase two. I think there's a lot of fear and trepidation around this issue, a fear of growth, fear of change, and I think that the messaging can really be changed. I think that this is an opportunity, like Steamboat's gonna continue to change. Steamboat's gonna continue to grow, and this is an opportunity for us to have a say and to shape that growth and to shape that change. I think that this, it's been made clear that the affordable housing crisis that we're in is an existential issue when it comes to the character and fabric of the town that we know and love. And I think that continued inaction on this gift that we've been given, on this golden opportunity, is going to be a continued disservice to the young people of this community.
I also believe that we should move into phase two. I want to build a better future for my community. I think that our next can be part of that.
In answer to Laura Lee's comment, I have gotten somewhat more conservative in my viewpoint since the vote. After sitting on this, although I think we should move forward to phase two. But I believe Jim's right, there's got to be a better presentation, an explanation, and a better plan. The existing plan with 2,264 units, as far as I'm concerned, is dead. And they're gonna come up with one that is more feasible, one that is more reflective of the concerns of the community. And as to the traffic, people don't know how lucky they are even facing the traffic we have here. If you've never lived in one of the major cities in the country, you have to deal with that traffic. But that's something that we can't solve, the CDOT can't solve, because 40 is a US highway. And at least for the next 3.5 years, there's been no federal funds coming to CDOT, which can't afford to otherwise address that. So all you can do is hope for better public transportation and moving forward with a more comprehensive and better plan into phase two.
Community we love can't exist without those who serve it and build it and teach it and care for it. So I vote yes, but I have a lot of concerns about the housing authority and transparency, and all of those things. But I'm thumbs up.
I am in the middle, knowing that that is a go vote to phase two. And transparency, trust, all that, which I'm speaking of now. If I can ask the group, regardless of whether you were for it or against it, if you can raise your hand, I'm really curious. Did anyone swing to the other side during this exercise? Did anyone change? I'm just curious, thank you.
I vote to move forward on phase two wholeheartedly. The idealist in me believes that we can create an imperfect utopia. I think the Amp Valley is already one of those things, but we have to work hard to protect it, and diversity makes us stronger, and preserves those ideals that we all, coalesced around in that first meeting. The realist in me does understand that phase two is not going to be about idealism. And I just hope that we can find a way to help the voters do what is going to provide the most benefits to the most people of our community. And I hope that involves the RTA, because I don't think that I'm not really sure when we get concerns about traffic on Brown Ranch, how we don't involve that whole political nightmare as well. Yay.
Well, I think at this point, because nothing's been ruled in, nothing's been ruled out, we should continue. I'm on for moving on to phase two. I feel like phase one, we didn't really get anywhere. If you look at, very few minds were changed and where we're going, but I think we need to come up with some concrete ideas and move forward, because I had hoped we'd be in a different place than we are today, so we'll keep going.
I have a couple of different things. One, I have not been fond of the process because it takes a long time. And it's been kind of ethereal to me. But interestingly enough, it did prompt me to do a lot of investigation about pros and cons and who had what side. I have to say, one of the big things I've seen that bombed this is all the appropriate things, but underneath it was the conniving, the lying, the guarded information. It really did make mistrust, but it wasn't all white and the housing authority. It also involved the city, and it also involved a lot of other people. So I think the dishonesty belongs to many. The other thing I see from being a futurist in a way, we have the opportunity to develop something at Brown that could be an example for us. And that could be, can we start? What do we think about it? What can we do? We don't know what the economy is going to be. But the reality is, if we have more and more wealth keep coming in this capitalistic society, is, okay, can we replicate what we're doing in Brown so that as 40 gets more and more developed, that we have lots of places that include more people.
I very strongly believe we should move to phase two. I would also like to say that I think I hear a lot of people saying that they don't have trust in the process. I do have trust in the answers in the process that is coming forward. I think there are still things that we can talk about and disagree on, but I do have trust in that process moving forward. And I think my main hope for phase two is that we not let perfection be the enemy. It's a good.
I'm a thumbs up to move forward. Kind of reiterate a couple of things, unfortunately, sorry, you have your voice. I think that having our workforce and our community and I guess we could call them locals, quote unquote, closer to where the jobs and the recreation are is a better decision. And a better for our quality of life, both for us and for these potential inhabitants at Brown Ranch, to really try and find a solution there. I am excited to geek out on all of the science behind the plan, behind coming up with the best solution, but I think that there very much is one, and looking forward to this plan.
I'm pro to move forward to phase two. I believe is primarily stemmed from the fact that I'm ready to talk about the how. But also additionally, while I too have my concerns about this process and have felt at times that this process needed to be more elaborate or done differently. But if we do trust the process, I think we're doing ourselves and this community a disservice to leave ourselves at a point where we're the most separated and there's the most amount of things.
I'm a thumbs up as well. I feel like that people talked about Brown Ranch being a gift, and we need to look at how to benefit of that. I think we continue to look at it in the context of the infill in near communities. I think phase two needs to be different in terms of more task oriented. And I think we need to have smaller groups. Similar to what Charlie was talking about, I think maybe more than 8, but if you have a smaller group, that one task is just take the ideas and try to actually put together a plan to putting in those different elements. I think you also need to have a task group focused on messaging and politics because of the need for the vote.
Yes.
Charlie, go on.
Yeah, I support moving forward. Well, and fairly, I don't think it's possible not to have some concerns. I just don't think that's possible, but fact is we have been given this opportunity and it behooves us to be a part of the process to try and find one solution, whatever those may look like. And I think there has to be a lot of flexibility to what things might look like.
I'm also a yes vote, and I'm gonna parrot some of what Charlie said. I think we're a wonderful group, and I thank everybody for being here. But I think we need to turn this over to the 6 or 8 professionals that we can put together that know a hell of a lot more than all of us know, to come up with the best design, the best use of the land, the best use of the buildable land, to create the things that we need. And yes, we can look at it from a 30 or 60,000 foot level, but I think it needs to go to professionals now.
Right, I was hoping I was gonna be exciting though. Like a John McCain, thumbs up, thumbs down. I have thumbs up, and I will take Charlie's additional 30 seconds that he didn't use. But I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I feel like I learned a lot. I was a hard yes coming in, I'm a hard yes going out. But I think I learned a lot and learned, like, for example, Trish was saying, you know, she wants to live in the community. This wouldn't work for her because she wouldn't be part of the community. Thinking about things like retired people, thinking about other groups in the community besides just our local workers. And I hope I learned enough that I can be contributing to phase 2 and the outcome. So, thank you.
All right, let's see if we have any of our, is there anyone who's online that would, Andrew, I see Andrew's vote in the chat. This is the actual vote. I'm a yes. Andrew, if you're still there, would you like to say a word? Or Tim, if you're, did you come off mute, Tim?
Yeah, I'm off mute if you can hear me.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the words that I've heard tonight, and I want to thank everyone for this long process. I'm a definite yes. I'm compelled by Charlie's argument. I think also Ryan made the same argument that by going forward, we have an opportunity to control the way we grow in a significant way. I also believe we need an all of the above strategy for housing, including infill, including supporting surrounding communities with their own housing needs. But I think Brown Ranch needs to be a part of that mix. So I'm a yes.
Thanks for hanging with us, Tim. And Andrew, are you there or as well? I'd love to hear your voice, or we got your vote in the chat. If not,
yeah, still here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So yes, I am a yes. I did come in as a yes and still leaving as a yes. I do appreciate this first phase process and its simplicity. I think we went off on lots of tangents at times, but just the pure simplicity of making sure we get all voices in one room to come to a very simple and clear consensus on do we want to move forward with Brown Ranch in any capacity. And I'm really happy to hear that most people are a yes in that regard, and I think it's a great first step.
All right. Well, thanks to you both. And I guess just to
Jerry Hernandez is also on the line.
Jerry, I'm so sorry. I thought that was your AI recorder. I'm so sorry. Jerry, you still there? Let's hear your vote.
Unfortunately, it's really me. You know, I wish I could have been there tonight. I had a conflict, but I really appreciate everything that I've heard tonight. I do believe we should move forward to the next to phase 2. I just wanted to comment on something that because there are real concerns, like we talked about, traffic this evening, and the immigrant population, who I feel that I am part of the reason I'm here is to be able to speak on their behalf because they've asked me to. And the Gutierrez family, the name has been changed to another Latino name to protect identities. Initially lived in a mobile home in Craig with her parents, this gal. She would make the long 45-minute to an hour commute from Craig to Steamboat every day for work. And she said it was horrible, that she hated it. So for context, research that I've done, and I mean, I'm happy to discuss it with anybody and see if anybody else has other research, is that Steamboat residents 13.7 minutes on average in traffic, workers commuting from Craig 45 to 60 minutes each way. So the US Census Bureau defines extreme commuting as commutes that are 90 minutes or more one way. So while Steamboat locals enjoy the well below average commute times, essential workers who can't afford to live here are approaching that, what's officially defined as an extreme commuting, spending two hours or more. So the reason that I think we should move forward is because we're not choosing, it's easy to say, well, it's a small percentage, right? If we're just thinking about the immigrant population, right? But immigrants might represent that small population, small percentage, but it's a small percentage that represents 40 to 60% of restaurant kitchen staff, a significant portion of hotel housekeeping and maintenance crews, essential construction and landscaping workers. And I got to tell you, it breaks my heart to represent the people or speak about the people that I serve as if I'm presenting their W-2 to the community that they've helped build. And when we talk about trade-offs, what is that trade-off? We're here, we enjoy and love the place that we live because of the way that it is, because there are people here who have contributed, who have raised their children here, who are continuing to contribute now. So if not doing this, if not moving to phase 2 improves traffic, maybe that's something to think about. But I just think that to value and honor the work that's been put into this by all of you in the community, I think we move on. And I know I'm going on and on, but I wanted to also mention too that my mind has been, changed in this process as well. I think it was Charlie that mentioned about, not really, the perspectives, right? Getting every single perspective, right? I agree. Yeah, we get to a point where, okay, we've talked and brought in as many perspectives as we can. And I think that in phase 2, courage is going to be necessary to move forward and say, okay, well, we've already talked about those things, so we don't need to revisit those issues or those topics because we've already talked about them, so that we don't, slow down and wait out. But that's all I have to say. I'm going to drop the mic now. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jerry. And I'm sorry I confused you for an AI bot there, a note taker. It was well worth hearing what you had to say. All right. Well, thank you all so much for sticking with us, and for all of you for being all the time that was in this process. We will compile all these notes and have a presentation. Yeah, so we'll send out the notes in the video as we've done, so you'll have all this for your, we're trying to take copious notes of all this last phase. We're kind of in the process of creating this as a report form that we'll send out in a draft form. Would love to, if those of you are willing to give some feedback on a quick turnaround, we'll get that final report done probably here in the next week or two. We have a presentation to the city council on September 9th about that report, and just to, kind of convey the words that you just shared as best we can to the council. Taking both the areas of consensus and the dissent where there was not yet agreement. And then we'll let you know that obviously it's ultimately the city council that will decide if there is a phase 2, but I think you've given the blessing for this group of, here's, we in general terms want to move forward, and here's, for those of us that are on the fence, here's what it needs to be like. And so it's great feedback for us to design. So I'll look to my teammates if there's anything else I forgot.
Just gonna shout out, Brad's gonna have that final survey, to just have some next steps on reflecting on this process, so.
Just want to say I appreciate everybody's time. I recognize that this is hard. I recognize the process can be frustrating. I think sitting from our position is interesting because we've actually seen sort of people, we've got a chance to sort of observe and see some of the shifts in thinking, and just mostly it's important to say, this kind of work dedicated to your community is fundamentally hard work, but it's better to be doing it and trying to carry something important for your community. So thanks for the time you invested. We don't know a lot.
And we need to thank you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate your leadership.
Bill, would Jason or Emily have anything to say?
Yes, I do now. We've been, Talking Brody team, board members, we've been here and listening the entire time. We hear everything that you guys have been saying. We understand that there's concerns. Kelly or Colin, I'd love to get together and shot. And we're committed to taking on this next step in a different way, so that we can be part of a solution that brings about a great
project at Ground Range, whatever that might be. We're totally open to what that new outcome might be. We certainly know it's gonna be smaller, we certainly know that it's going to be more geared towards the voters. And so we're excited to kind of roll up our sleeves and get in and see what that looks like. So thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
All right, I think there's a 2-for-1 deal on pizza. Thank you all so much. We will be in touch very shortly with next steps. Ciao. Richard. Yeah, absolutely. Send it out.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess I paid to myself. Interesting watching. There were some times I was really frustrated with how it's going. I'm like,
People really it's not possible. I think so.
That's great.
What